Okay, we're right at 12. Welcome in everybody to the CyberFOX AutoElevate new tech training and live Q&A. I'm Mandy Rimke. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at CyberFOX. But I'll be in the background today really to facilitate, hopefully get you guys some good training in this live session with two of our amazing support engineers that are on today. So we have Makai Martini and Joe Podless. So I'm just going to pass it over to them. It looks like we have a bunch of people on. People will be filtering through. Makai's going to walk us through AutoElevate. I feel like most of us have probably seen it, but if you haven't, this will be really good walkthrough for you. And then Joe is going to help us out with a Q&A at the end.
Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm Makai. Thanks for the introduction there. We're going to be going over some more of the technician side today, some best practices of generally walking through the portal and things like that. If you pay attention to the screen here, I'm actually going to quickly walk you through just the end user experience of AutoElevate, show you how this is exactly going to look for a user just trying to run elevation, basically. There's many times throughout people's days where they're needing to install or update things. It's as simple as going ahead in your device. We'll just go ahead and find something like Chrome here. Go ahead and run this as an administrator. You're going to see AutoElevate's going to start working here, and boom, there you go. From here, you're going to start seeing this little pop-up. And from here, it's as simple as adding a little explanation. I'm trying to run Chrome to get to YouTube. And there you go. As soon as I click yes on this, this is going to start playing out a little timer. And from there, on my portal there, I should have just gotten a notification. Now, real quick, I did want to mention this is a setting that we're going to go over in a bit. This is typically something that I recommend to turn on, this little timer interval, but I'll explain that in a little bit. From here, if we direct our attention back to our teams or our portal here, you're going to see if we head over into the elevation requests, there should actually be a new request under this pending coming from my device. And look, there we go. First things first, from our elevation request, you'll get a notification whether that comes from your phone, mobile app, ticketing system if you were integrated with one. And from here, to answer it, it's as simple as clicking the little eyeball icon next to it. From there, it's going to bring us into our request. First things first, generally when you are answering a request or making a rule, you're going to notice some information at the top or in the right here. You obviously want to understand what you're working with. If you are a new technician or something like that, you don't understand what it is, typically you do want to ask somebody, you want to research into it, you do want to reach out to the user even if their little explanation wasn't good enough. We are working with admin rights, and that is very, very important to us. Besides that, you're actually going to see on the bottom left here, my little user explanation. My user did give me a little explanation, which can be helpful as well. In this case, they're trying to get to YouTube. Cool, that might make me want to approve it more than it does if it wasn't there, right? So definitely something that I would recommend. This is another setting that I'll show you where you can turn on. It's not on by default. On the bottom left here, you're going to see some app and computer security checks. Typically, you want to make sure that you're approving something from somewhere safe. If there are a few X's, that's never necessarily a major bad thing, unless you were specifically seeing app security checks and both of them were red, in which case we're actually not going to allow you to deny that. Or sorry, to approve that. With that being said, in this case, there's a whole bunch of green check marks, so this makes me want to approve it more. Cool, cool. You can see here, my little lab admin's trying to run Google Chrome, so we do get a little brief explanation as well. And from here, we can go ahead and approve or deny it. If we go ahead and click this little approve button, it's going to bring up a little menu. From here, you can see you can set this approval as a one-time exception, or alternatively, you can make a basic rule off of this as well. So let's just say, for instance, we wanted to make it so that anytime Google Chrome was ran on this one device, we want it to be approved just from now on. They don't have to send in another request. It's always going to be approved. From here, we can do that. We can just select this computer. We'll go ahead and leave the elevation type right now as admin. I'll get into why that is in a little bit once we get into rule creation itself. But from here, if we go ahead and click OK, my user should have just get that notification. Now, going back to that little timer that we showed up, we answered within the time window, so the user got an immediate notification on that. Typically, the AutoElevate behavior that's going to take place is as soon as you send in a request, the next time that a user is going to get a notification is at the next agent check-in. When I do mention an agent check-in, you do want to understand that's going to happen 2 separate times. The first is going to be anytime a UAC event shows up on the computer. The second is going to be automatically within 10 minutes. our agent is always going to check in within that little 10-minute window. So normally, if you do answer a request, the user is going to get notified within the next 10-minute window. It's not always going to be immediate unless you had this timer enabled. So in this case, I answered within that little 5-minute window. So we got the immediate notification. If we click OK on this, it's simply going to run our program. You can see here, it's going to examine, it's going to see, oh, yep, this was approved, and boom, there we go. AutoElevate's done its magic. All right. That being said, one quick thing I also wanted to mention is from this request itself, your name is always going to be attached to this. So you can see in this case, my name was attached. It put it right here. And you can also see that this was approved for this one computer. And it did make a rule as well, just because it mentions it happened on this computer. Real quick, back from the elevation request tab, I quickly want to mention that the default page view on this is going to look just like this. This can be a little bit confusing, especially if you have a bunch of requests showing up like I do right now. Something that I do recommend is making use of our grid views. Our grid views are our way of sorting and filtering information on pages. And personally, I'm going to recommend this little status/result column right here. To modify the grid view, it's as simple as drag and dropping. To the top left under this actions menu where it says drag a column header here. It's going to snap into place, and boom, you're going to be on this grid view, which I was just using. Now, the reason I recommend this grid view is this is actually going to show you the pending requests that you haven't gotten to yet. This is also going to show you how these have been approved and denied in the past as well. As you can see, these have been approved and made a rule of, approved one time, denied one time. So this is definitely something that I recommend is one, experimenting with this grid view, but also two, if you did want to copy this grid view, it's certainly something that I've found success with. The next thing that I want to show you is actually rule creation before a elevation request gets sent in. And this is typically going to be done in your audit, but you can always come back and monitor what your users are using and make rules off of those as well. If we head over into the elevation events tab, you're going to see something that looks just like this. What's important to note about this is anytime a UAC event ran on your computers, no matter what. We're always going to check in, pull some information, and put that down from here so that you can make a rule off of that. No matter the elevation mode, whether it's audit, policy, or live, this little audit log is always going to be here, and you always have the option of making a rule off of it. To make a rule, it's very, very simple. If you go ahead and select this little box, actions in the top left, you can see you're going to give the option to convert to a rule. Go ahead and do that. Top left here, again, some information about it. Again, you want to understand what you're working with. From there, cool, I've understood that this is Microsoft Teams in this case. You're going to see under this identification criteria, this is how we narrow down the application that we're approving itself. Probably going to notice that the only thing selected by default here is going to be this file hash. The file hash is a secure means of sort of narrowing down the application itself. It's unique to the one application, but it's actually too good at its job. It's unique to the one version of the application. So typically, it's not our best practice to use this file hash. There are cases where you do want to use the file hash, but typically the first thing you're going to do to determine whether you're going to be using that is check to see if this has a publisher. In this case, Microsoft Teams does. It's associated with this Microsoft Corporation publisher. So therefore, we're going to go ahead and use this. We're going to unselect the file hash, and we're going to use this certificate hash at the bottom here. This certificate hash is going to be pretty much as solid security-wise as the file hash. And it is also going to change, but it's not going to change with an update. It's going to change whenever the cert itself needs to renew. And typically this can be every 1 to 3 years. Generally, it's going to be more on the year side, but I have seen ones that get extended for a long amount of time. So just keep that in the back of your mind as well. Now, cool, are we finished to do with our rule? That's all we need to do? No, not quite. Now, the reason I say that is the publisher itself is going to be approving everything that is associated to this Microsoft Corporation. Anything with this publisher is going to be approved. So typically what we're going to ask is for you to scroll back up, use one of the file criteria here to sort of narrow down the application itself that we're approving. Typically, I'm going to recommend the file name, but you can also use the product name in the original file name as well. Really, the key point of this isn't necessarily to be the security behind it, but more so to narrow down the application itself that we're approving. So in this case, I'll use the file name. If in the case that this was called something like installer.exe, maybe I wouldn't use this. This is pretty generic. If they were using this for one thing, they're probably using it for a few others under this publisher. So typically you do want to make a judgment call and use the most secure one. In this case, this was msteams.exe. That's pretty unique to what it is. There's not going to be another application out there that has this as the original file name, so we'll go ahead and use this instead. One other quick thing that I'll mention, this is more for advanced rules, but you could use it if you got adjusted to it, and this is the Windows wildcard system. We do support this here. If you were familiar with it, you can use these to make a little more advanced rules. If you wanted to catch version numbers, if you wanted to make sure that you're not getting caught by something like, I'm sure that you probably have seen this, but if you have a copy for something, it's going to say this little 1 next to it. You could put something like a little, what is it? Oh, I clicked 1. Click this little star here, and then anything that comes after the star, it won't care about. So this is definitely something that I'd recommend maybe looking into if you were interested in making more advanced rules. And there's a little tutorial right here. If you wanted to click this, it'll give you a little more insight on that. Besides that, we're going to quickly talk about the right side here under the general settings, because you do want to go through these. First thing here is going to be the approval status. You can make approve rules, you can make deny rules, but you can also make ignore rules. Ignore rules are a bit of an interesting case, and they're generally a bit of a niche, but you still want to understand them. An ignore rule is going to default back to the native window process and show the standard Windows UAC prompt, almost like AutoElevate isn't interfering in the first place. Something that you could do with this is maybe something like command prompt. If you wanted it so only and only people with admin credentials get past this, you could. It's never going to make a request. It's always going to default to this ignore, which is just going to be showing the standard Windows UAC. So effectively, it's going to put that little brick wall in front of them that says, hey, you can only get in with the password, right? There could be a few use cases, but generally you're going to stick to this approve and deny. Under this, we have the elevation type, and this is how the user gets walked through the elevation. What I mean by this is what user credentials are being put into the UAC prompt to get the user through in the first place. For most things, the good news is you just want to leave this as the admin elevation. This is the default, and this is going to be using our own personal admin account to walk the user through that elevation. It has something like 127 character long password. It's constantly going to be rotating. Nobody has access to this. This is going to make this the most secure option. Unfortunately, you can't use it for everything. There are certain applications out there that are going to require a little more user context. And what I mean by that is they specifically need to see the current signed-in user as an admin, or they need to see user-specific files and folders. Some examples of this are things like network drives, printer drivers, things like that. I know another big example is QuickBooks, specifically the QuickBooks Updater requires this. And you can use this here and also in the elevation request itself. When you are answering a request, it does give you that little option if you remember seeing that. Also attached is going to be this little article. So if you're ever confused by this and needed a little more context, it's always going to be there for you. And this article will give you a brief explanation going through all that and a little more. One quick thing that I'll mention for the user elevation is going to be how the end user is going to experience this. The first time that user elevation shows up on a computer, we are going to ask the current signed-in user to input their username and password. We are then going to cache this and use it for future use of user elevation, meaning the only time that a user is going to realize user elevation is needed is the first time it shows up. One more thing I wanted to mention is, and this is probably a question that's come up, is how often is user elevation going to be needed? And how do I tell when I need to use this user elevation? The good news is I would say like 96% of things are going to be perfectly fine with this admin, probably like 4% for this user elevation. And another thing is sometimes it is just going to be a little bit of trial and error. Generally, a good indicator that you need to use the user elevation is a Windows error shows up. If you went through a request and you tried to run the application and it showed a Windows error saying something about user files or something like that, you can always try this user elevation as a backup. It's never going to be harmful to use the user elevation, but typically since the admin elevation is going to be superior in security, we're going to recommend this as a default. I believe that's pretty much everything with that. If you guys did have any questions or anything like that, again, have that Q&A, so make sure you put those down. Besides that, we're going to continue on here. We're going to quickly talk about the level. There's a very, very simple rule to follow whenever we talk about level, and that's going to be the more specific you are about a rule, the higher priority it will have. Meaning, if you had a global deny rule for this Microsoft Teams here, and you had a computer-specific rule that is approving it for one computer, the approval rule for the computer is going to take a priority on that. So more specific you are about a rule, higher priority it has. Last but not least here is going to be this friendly name. What you want to understand about the friendly name is this is optional, but it is a best practice of ours to use this. And there's a couple reasons on why. before I get into those reasons, the first thing that I'm going to recommend is the naming convention that I'm going to provide. Typically, I'm going to use the product name, the approval status, and the level at which this rule is applying. So if I were making this specifically to be a rule right now, I would go something about Microsoft, maybe even just Teams, even just to make it as simple as possible. I know what that is. Dash approved, dash, since this is a global rule, we'll do global. Let's just say if this was a company specific rule here, we'll do this for our little Militech or whatever it is. I'll actually put the name of the company itself. And from there, that's pretty much our rule. Click this little save. It's going to go ahead and save it. And from their elevation rules here, it's going to show up. Now, quickly to go back on the reasons on why I recommend filling out this friendly name. If you notice here, some of these have friendly names, some of them don't. If we go ahead and see under this little Militech one for our rule earlier, we're going to see our little friendly name show up right here under this column for it. This is helpful in regards to the file hash and the publisher hash that I mentioned earlier. Eventually, these are going to be basically obsolete. They're no longer going to apply as it's going to change the publisher. It's going to have a different file hash, something like that. So establishing an audit maybe once a quarter or something like that can definitely be helpful. Coming back and making sure that you have only relevant rules left on this page. It's very helpful to just go into this friendly names and go, yep, this is happening with Microsoft Teams here. It's approved, and this is applying only to this company. Boom, I know everything about the rule in 2 seconds. I don't have to go to the right and find all that information. Yep, this is an approved rule, anything like that. I don't have to dive in the rule. All the important information is right here for me. Now, going back to the other reasons on why I do this is actually heading back to the elevation requests. Let's just go ahead and take a look at this request here that I have. From here, let's go ahead and see about approving it. You can see this little elevation type that I mentioned earlier. But under this, you can see the options like I mentioned earlier to approve and make this a rule. Let's go ahead and take a look at the rule that we created earlier. I don't think it was that one. Yep, it was right here. So from here, if you notice, this doesn't have a friendly name. So if we actually dive into the rule itself, you're going to notice, hey, no friendly name, but more importantly, we're just using the file hash for this, which means after an update, this rule is no longer going to apply. So one thing that you do want to understand is if you are making a rule off of request, it is going to be making the most basic rule possible, meaning just this right here, right? The only thing selected is the file hash, no friendly name attached to it. So if you're ever coming back into the elevation rules tab, it's very easy to go, hey, this doesn't have a friendly name. It's probably a rule not following our best practice, and then go ahead and edit it from there. That's definitely something that I've found success with. General rule of thumb is something that doesn't have a friendly name, probably not a rule following your best practice. So again, another reason on why I recommend filling out that friendly name. Trying to think if there was any last things that I was missing in regards to the elevation. Okay. Back to the elevation events, I quickly did have a recommendation. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, and this is going to be the grid view that I have for this. If you notice, I have this little name column right here. I found success with this grid view as this is going to show me more high traffic items. If you pay attention to the number right next to it, it's going to actually tell you how many times this application has been ran. So under this little Microsoft column, you can see here, this is, looks like these are 2 different things. It's Microsoft Teams and Outlook, but still coming from Microsoft. So cool, Microsoft part things have been ran twice. This CyberFOX DNS, it's been ran twice. If this was ran maybe 10 times or something like that, this is an easy way to go, hey, this is probably something I want to make a rule for. You can also take a look under this had matching rule column. In this case, looks like there was already a rule for it, so cool, maybe I didn't have to do that, but definitely helpful to come back in your elevation events and maybe make some rules preemptively. Definitely something you can do. Besides that, there was one more thing that I wanted to show you on our little demo client here. And this is going to be more for technicians, as this is going to be our technician mode. As the name sort of implies, this is for technicians. Technician mode is going to put the computer or the user in a temporary state where for the next 15 minutes, blocker is going to be disabled, and any new elevation event that shows up, whether there's a rule associated or not, will be automatically approved. This is super helpful for technicians. Obviously, if you're installing a bunch of programs, instead of going through 15 requests or something like that, put yourself into that technician mode. You'll be automatically approved for every single one of them, right? There are 2 different ways of accessing technician mode. The first is going to be from our computers menu here. If you were to go ahead and select the computer, actions in the top left, you're going to find this technician mode in the middle of the screen. From here, if you were to turn this on, it's going to require an agent check-in. And like I mentioned earlier, there's two different ways that's going to take place every 10 minutes and anytime a UAC event ran up. So if we were to go ahead and just turn this on right here, might have to do that for both of them. No, that was actually my machine. So from here, if we were to go ahead and run another UAC prompt, we'll do Chrome again. As administrator, that'll cause an agent check-in. Then from there, you can see it got automatically approved. That might have been because of our rule, but also if you notice that caused that agent check-in, immediately putting me into this technician mode. So let's go ahead and run Microsoft Edge. We'll do that as an administrator. It'll show up a UAC prompt, and you'll be given a little menu on the right here, in which case you can immediately decide whether you wanted to use the user elevation, the admin elevation, and just bypass it immediately. If it wants to show up, there you go. And from here, you can see this is an easy way of telling, hey, you're in technician mode. We'll go ahead and use this admin elevation, and boom, there we go. No rule attached, immediately got us through. Definitely something that's helpful. This is going to save you a lot of time. That being said, there is a secondary way of accessing our technician mode, and this is going to be not from the portal, but from the device itself. If you were to press Control-Alt-A on any device that has our agent deployed, this is going to show up a little QR code. This QR code you can scan with our mobile app, and once done so, will immediately flip your computer into technician mode. No need to wait for that little 10-minute timer. No need to run another UAC event to flip your computer into that. It will immediately grant that access. Definitely something you want to have is our mobile app. If you didn't already, it's going to be called AutoElevate Notify. One of the first things is obviously technician mode that you'll have access to there. Another feature is going to be getting push notifications. As soon as a new request becomes active, you're going to get a notification of that from your phone, which you can then also answer from your phone, which is super, super helpful. The last thing that you're going to have access to is a feature called Just-in-Time Admin. And this, based on your admin, might be something that you have access to, it might not be. But it's basically going to be a pre-provisioned admin across your computers, lacking a username and password, and instead using that same QR code. It's not going to be something that I go over today just because for private reasons, I believe some people might want to have that exclusively for their top-level admins. So just keep that in mind. If you were interested, obviously you could research that more in our little portal here, our little help desk. Sorry, not help desk. Knowledge base, that's the word. And there are articles going over that can give you a brief explanation and use on that, but might be something you want to talk about with your admins just to see whether that's going to be something that you have access to. Let me take a step back. Oh, yes. One quick thing I wanted to mention, and this goes with the settings that I was talking about earlier, for the timer that showed up, and also the explanation itself that the user can give. These are not on by default. Instead, you would have to find these and turn these on in the settings. So in case these settings seemed interesting to you, to find them, it's actually going to be in this settings tab under the agent customizations. You're going to find it as the fourth one down here for the elevation request explanation. Click the little pencil on this. You can see you can enable this or enable it and make it a requirement. And then for the timer interval here, it's going to be the second to last one under here. And from here, you can see this one is going to be on by default, but it's actually going to be only a 60-second timer. So just 60 seconds by default, just to give you guys some introduction to it. I'm typically going to recommend about 300 seconds to start, give you guys enough time to actually research into it and still provide a faster time to the user getting that notification back. But typically that's what I'm going to recommend, but I would recommend experimenting and seeing how your end users feel about it before hard committing to one. You can also disable the timer in case you didn't like the timer and didn't want to give them a false expectation that you're always going to answer within the time window. You can simply set this to 0, and the next time that shows up, there's going to be nothing but saying, hey, we'll get to you when we get to you, basically. Besides that, I'm trying to think of any last things here, because I feel like I'm missing something. That's pretty much it in terms of the elevation. I would pretty much open it up to questions at this point, just because I'm lacking anything specifically to go over. If you wanted to take it away there, Joe.
Yeah, how's it going, guys? My name is Joe. If you guys do have any questions, we do have the Q&A chat box up in the top. If you want to drop a question in there, I'll do my best to get to it. Otherwise, Jenna and Mandy, are we going to be doing questions over the mic here?
No,
Yeah,
no.
just if.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Jenna, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, to reiterate, yeah, let's just keep using the Q&A, and also the chat is available too. Also, I believe the chat is available after, if there are additional questions post webinar.
And Joe, did you want me to jump in and answer some questions as well?
Yeah, if you want to, that's totally fine.
Gotcha. Just seeing here.
Yeah, so Alex, in regards to your question there, if an asset remains offline for several months and we change its elevation policy from audit to live, how does AutoElevate handle this scenario? Basically, first of all, the agent would drop out of the portal after a period of 30 days of inactivity, but whenever it does come back on, it would register that change and reappear in the portal.
Ethan there just asked how long technician mode lasts and is there any way to modify this? That is a good question. And the answer to that is yes. 15 minutes is going to be the default on that. And you can actually find this in the settings under the agent security column. It is going to be the second to last option here for the technician mode timeout. You can see here it's set to 15 by default. One quick warning that I did want to give about that though, before you adjust this. One thing you do want to understand about technician mode is this is going to be 15 minutes to access whatever you need. If you were to run a program like command prompt as an administrator, this is going to be left that way even after the 15-minute window. So even if that's 3 hours later, it's still going to be an administrative command prompt window. So you do want to understand it is 15 minutes to open up whatever you need. So typically 15 minutes is enough that we've found for that. If you did want to extend or shorten it, you can from there, but just definitely want to understand that key difference before you adjust that.
Hey guys, and I see Alex had 2 more questions in the chat that he put in. One does AutoElevate support user elevation for devices logged in with Intra or Azure AD accounts?
Yeah, it should.
And then the second one, or the third one, was, I think he's referring to when we're having the AWS, but in the event of an AutoElevate outage, what is the recommended best practice for accessing a computer with admin privileges? He said we encountered an issue during an outage where they were unable to log into machines. How should this be mitigated?
Yeah, so if there's ever a situation where the agent's offline, the default Windows UAC is going to prompt. And from that point on, if you do have any accounts that still have admin rights, you'd be able to enter those credentials and elevate accordingly. Makai, do you mind sharing your screen again and just pulling up the excluded admin users section and maybe touching on that real quick?
Yes, of course. Let me know. There we go. Apologize on screen sharing. I only have one screen today, so I'm bumping between the Teams chat and this. The agent security here. If you see here, this excluded admin users, this is going to be a whitelist. This whitelist is going to be any local admin account that you want unaffected by both our removal admin privileges at the global level and also the computer level. Simply go ahead and from here, you can go ahead and add your local admins that you want to keep. And from there, we're going to unaffect those. One quick thing that I will mention is the remove admin privileges for the global policy is going to be right here. From here, if you go ahead and do this, you can see you can turn this on right here. This is going to be the global setting. If you did want to do this per company and per location, to do that from the settings page, you would click this little plus in the top left. Go ahead and select the level at which you want this to apply. Go ahead and just select my little location here. And then from here, we can turn on this policy for just this one location. One quick thing while you are just stocking up on the questions there that I can come back to is the computers here. Generally, when this is going to be more of the setup, but this can still be worth going over, is some of the computer specific settings you can do here. If you were to go ahead and select the computer here in this actions menu, you're going to see a whole bunch of settings. Just to quickly go over a couple of these. Under the computer management, if you did need to move a device, you can do this with this little move. If you needed to uninstall the agent, you do have an option right here with this little delete. Our various elevation modes. This definitely could be helpful as definitely policy might be a little bit unexplained from some people's point of view. Just to give you a brief explanation of all of these, audit. In audit, it is completely silent. There's zero end user interference at this point. The only behavior that's going to be taking place is the monitoring of UAC events. As soon as that shows up on your computer, we're going to check in, pull some information, and put that down in the elevation events tab. The one thing you want to understand, though, is this is going to be consistent between every elevation mode. Both policy and live mode are also going to include this. Policy and live are both going to start applying your rule set. Approve rules, deny rules, whatever you have in place, they are going to apply. If you were to run the Chrome installer and there is a Chrome installer rule, we're going to approve it. Now, let's just say we ran the Edge installer or the Edge updater or whatever it is, and there wasn't a rule for it. In policy mode, we're going to revert back to the native window process. So almost like that ignore that I mentioned earlier, this is basically going to show that standard Windows UAC, almost like AutoElevate wasn't interfering in the first place. In live mode, same behavior is somewhat going to apply, but instead of ignoring it, the end user is instead going to be given the option to send in a request for elevation. And we walked through that whole process, but definitely something you still want to just understand. Besides that, going back to the admin permed one, I mentioned that you can do this per computer as well. And from here, this is going to be right here under this remove admin privileges. You just set this on per computer if you needed to. Hope that was enough to answer that there.
That was great. And then Caleb said that they're still a bit confused on the purpose of user elevation option as it pertains to allowing programs.
So it is a bit interesting on how it works, but the way that you can think about it is there are some applications out there that need to see user-specific things. For instance, like a printer driver or something like that. There are some applications that don't have access to the folders. So if you were to run with the admin elevation, it's going to be using our own personal admin account, not the users. So there are folders attached to the user specifically that we need to see, we need to access, we need to put things into. So something like that is going to need that user elevation. Another thing is just for security reasons, there are some applications that want to see the current signed-in user be an admin and not necessarily our own personal admin account. If that hopefully answers that.
I think so. And then Drew asked, what is the best practice for giving non-admin users access to edit adapter options in the control panel? UAC only really applies to the DLL. Should I just allow this group of techs to be set with local admin instead?
Yeah, so in a situation like that, basically, like you said, it only relies on the DLL, so you really would only be able to do one-time approvals without giving them full access to everything. So you could set up the explanation setting like Makai mentioned earlier, so you can get a little bit more information when that request is coming in, and then you can grant that one-time approval accordingly. Or you could create a rule and just set it up for a select location that those techs are a part of, so that way only they will have access to use that rule.
Thanks, Joe. And then Ethan asked, what is the default timer on technician mode? Is there any way to modify how long it lasts?
I believe we did address that. Yeah, that is 15 minutes by default. The way of adjusting that is under the global settings, under the agent security. It's going to be the second to last drop down here for the technician mode timeout. I see Chug there asking, is there a way to create a policy for a company to go to elevation mode live? So unfortunately, no, there isn't as it stands right now. Really, the only option that you have is to go to your computers. You can go ahead and bring this company drop down right here. We'll go ahead and open up all my Megacorp options. And we can go ahead and select this little box at the top, which is going to apply everything that it can. So we'll just go ahead and do that. We'll go in that actions and we'll set them to the elevation mode of live. I believe I actually just put in a recent request for setting for the UAC level for a policy. Maybe this could be something that we could add on to that in that as a feature request, something to put on a policy per company level. Might be something that we're willing to look into. I can certainly see about that.
And then Caleb messaged and said, I know we skipped the just-in-time feature, but quick technical question. Is it in real time creating admin accounts, or is it enabling a hidden or disabled account for use?
I believe the answer to that is that gets pre-provisioned. I don't believe it's hiding or anything like that. I believe it gets provisioned at the time that you enable it. And then once you log off, it's going to go ahead and delete itself and then re-provision itself right after. That is correct, Joe. I'm not 100% sure on that.
That's correct. Yeah. So it depends on the configuration that you have set for the just-in-time feature. There's an option where you can have it deleted upon log off every time, as Makai said. Or if you have it set to not delete, then the account would just be disabled while it's not in use.
That here you can see in the just-in-time admin right here. Third option right here, the just-in-time admin configuration, where you can actually enable the actual just-in-time admin. You can see here, right here at the bottom, you can change that right here, whether this gets deleted after every log off. All right.
And then he asked what the recommendation for that setting is.
So that is a good question. And I've actually had a very 50-50 split on what it comes to from users that I've seen on this. Obviously, with it on, it is a better security practice. However, I'm sure a lot of us realize that there are applications out there or changing of Windows settings where it's going to ask for you to restart after, in which case it's going to have to re-provision itself. It might take 2 to 5 minutes, which can be seen as inconvenient. So it really is whether you sort of want to weigh it and say, hey, the security is more worth it, or if I wanted to keep the same user every time and not run into that situation and always have it on hand. Personally, I'm probably going to lean more to the convenience side. I think that nobody's going to be able to log in using a password or anything to that account in the first place. So normally I'm going to recommend to turn it off, but we don't necessarily have a company-wide recommendation when it comes to that.
And then they're circling back a little bit to the purpose of the user elevation option. So Alex had said user elevation prompts to enter user login credentials. Let's say we have an intra logged in user that needs server access to share, like a server share. What credentials should we be entering in to be able to allow that software access to the share?
Trying to see what that.
Yeah, so you would just have the logged in user enter their credentials and they would have access to it if it's something that's shared across the network to that user.
I did just see a question there for the security context. So we are going to be running as a local administrator. Pre-provisioned with our agent comes a administrator that gets accessed or provided. This is going to be like AE agent 0001, something like that. Joe, correct me. But this is going to be the default, and we do have an option if that fails for whatever reason to run under the system. I believe that's correct there, Joe?
Yeah, it operates under system.
Gotcha. Question right under it there. Apologies, I don't want to butcher your name. Unfortunately, there is no way to set per company, per location as it stands right now. Like I did mention, this could be something that maybe we're looking to change in the long run. But as of right now, really what you would want to do is you would want to modify the grid views. You would set your specific company. You would go ahead and select all your devices, which is easy just because you can click this little box at the top here, which is going to select everything that it can. You can see here if I have both of these open, it's going to select all of them. But if I were to minimize this one, select them all, you can see this one wasn't selected. And from there, you can just go into actions and you can just set it. Like I mentioned earlier, this is something that we're hopefully, I'm personally going to be inputting as a feature request for the UAC settings specifically, just because I see a use case in which most people just want to find a best practice with this. But unfortunately, right now, there is no set policy for something like that. And right under it is actually another good question, which is the UAC settings. Windows just comes with a native Windows setting, which is going to be this Windows UAC scale. And this is effectively how often Windows is going to show up that UAC prompt. There are some things that require a higher admin right to run than others. I know an example of this, I believe, is Task Manager itself. If you notice here, under my little window for my devices, you can see my UAC status here is set to that on dimmed, and you can see the admin level and the user level are set to different levels here. There are 4 different levels, and they're effectively going to change how admins and users respond to these things. There are certain things that require higher admin rights is really what I'm saying. Really what I'm saying, just the easy answer to put it to an example is Task Manager. If you were to run this as an administrator at a level 4, so what this user is currently set to, it is going to show up a UAC prompt, and thus AutoElevate is going to interfere with this. If you were to run it at a level 3, this is not going to show up Windows UAC. So from that Task Manager, you would be able to run that as an administrator. I believe is the answer to that. Real quick, there is a easy answer to this, just because I know obviously if you're seeing this, you might be a little confused. You might have to be like testing this out. This is a native Windows setting. So one, if you did want to research into that, Windows has articles about this. The easy answer, though, is to find a best practice and stick to this. Generally, you want all devices just to be set to 1. We only support 2 options. This is going to be on dimmed and on maximum. On dimmed is going to be our default. It's Windows default. It's their best practice. So typically, we're just going to advise to stick to this on dimmed and make sure all of your devices are following this. The only difference between on dimmed and maximum, if I can click out of this menu and go back to here, is how this treats admin levels. Both on maximum and on dimmed are going to be setting your users at the maximum level, which is going to be this level 4. On dimmed is going to be setting your admin level at 3. On maximum is going to be setting this to 4. So between those two, there's no difference for your standard users. This is only going to be affecting admin level. And generally, because you're an admin, we want you to have a bit more of a streamlined, easy experience. So typically, we recommend this on dimmed, which is going to set it, again, to that level 3. And Joe, that was correct, right? I'm not delusional about anything there.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I think we are wrapped up. All of our questions have been answered. Like Jenna said earlier, I think that the chat should stay open, I believe, after the meeting is over. So if you do have any more questions, feel free to drop them in there. Or like Joe said, you can put in a support ticket, or you can also speak with your account manager. We're always happy to help and happy to answer questions for you guys to help you use CyberFOX AutoElevate the best way that you can. Thank you, Jenna, so much for setting this up. I think it was a really good session. I hope it was really helpful to all of you guys who have either seen AutoElevate or haven't seen AutoElevate, or was a good refresher. And then especially thank you to Joe and Makai, our incredible support engineers, for getting on and helping out with this as well.
Yeah, no worries, guys. It's been a pleasure.